Welcome back. You're watching Investors Guide. This is our Freedom from Debt episode. We're talking about your loans. We have questions that have come in through the week. And this question is from Sandra Coutinho. She writes in saying she has 2 home loans at the moment. The outstanding on the first home loan is 7.5 lakh rupees. And she's paying a fairly high interest rate of 12.25% since the 1st of August. Now, she's also taken a sabbatical because she has a brand new baby to look after. Let's take a look at Sandra and her problem.
Young David takes up most of his mother's time, which is why Sandra has taken a year off from work to look after her son. But increasing expenses and high rate interests are making it difficult for the family to meet their EMI commitments on 2 home loans they have running.
So in the recent past, the RBI has hiked the interest rates a couple of times, and currently, since my husband is the only earning member, he is also incurring all the expenses and these EMIs. So it's becoming a little difficult to manage both the loans.
Sandra now needs to find ways to bring down the financial burden of her loans, at least until she is ready to go back to work.
So I really wanted to know if it would be prudent to redeem some of my mutual funds and pay off the more expensive loan, or sell off one of the properties and prepay all the loans and probably look at buying another property sometime in the near future when the interest rates are more attractive.
Right, so Sandra's question first is if she should be redeeming her mutual funds, which will pay her about 2 lakh rupees to pay off her home loan. But Adil, you were talking about the fact that there is a possibility for her to refinance that loan instead of liquidating the home. Does that make sense?
Correct. So what we know about Sandra's case is, one, she's paying 12.25% on one of her loans today, which is an expensive amount. Now, a lot of people who are on the old BPLR regime are in that kind of interest range today, which is about 12%. What we also know today that is a new home loan is available roughly at 11%, maybe 10.75%, maybe a little less, but let's assume 11%. Now, based on what Sandra has told us, she's told us that her 7.5 lakh loan has 8 years left and her 30 lakh loan has 18 years left. Now, based on what she's told us, her outgoing EMI per month is roughly about 45,000 rupees today. Now, assuming all else being equal, we don't change the tenors, but we refinance both the loans to the same tenor but at 11%, right? Not taking into account the processing fee and the pre-closure fee, her EMI goes down to 43,000 rupees per month roughly. So she could save 2,000 rupees per month by refinancing her loan. However, she needs to take into account, how much the pre-closure cost is and what the processing fee is. But today, banks are getting very aggressive on this product. There are banks which are offering 0% proc fee if you're refinancing your loans. So she needs to look and get advice from a trusted advisor.
All right, so there is a possibility, Sandra, that you might be able to refinance that loan. Direndra, I'm going to bring you in here. She has 2 lakh rupees in mutual funds. She wants to know if it makes sense to redeem the mutual funds right now and use that money to prepay her loan. In a market like this, she might not get too much out of those mutual funds if they're equity mutual funds, but would you recommend that for her?
You liquidate your investment, equity investment, in case of emergency. And if it is not one, I don't think it is recommended to get out of your equity without a plan.
All right, don't get out of equity without a plan. Her other option, Gaurav, is to liquidate a home for about 50 lakh rupees and use one to pay off the other loan. Does that make sense? First of all, selling a home is a really painful process. We all know it takes time, it takes energy. But would you recommend she consider that?
No, because time, energy, there could be capital gains tax implications, and she's on sabbatical, which means she's going to go back. She isn't saying that I've terminated, I've come to an end. So unless you don't have that information, selling of a house to refinance, also we're talking about the value of house much higher and the outstanding loans are not that great. So it's not making too much sense to go and do that drastic step unless you are in real financial distress.
Does it make sense, Adil, for her to consider increasing the tenure of the loan if it's this drastic that she's considering liquidating her mutual funds and her real estate asset? Does it make more sense to just increase the tenure of the loan till as far as she can?
Potentially, that's a good solution. In fact, banks encourage it because, you know, their interest earning also increases. So for her to increase the 18-year loan into a 20 or a 22-year loan, she can always talk to her bankers about it. And typically in a rising rate scenario, that is the first option that the bank itself brings to the borrower, saying, hey, you know, keep your EMI steady, but let's increase your tenor, or let's decrease your EMI and increase your tenor. So that option definitely is on the table, but then her interest outgo actually increases over the lifetime.
Gaurav, I remember we spoke some time ago about this whole thing of higher interest rates, higher inflation. How do you make things work? There is a way to approach our investments and our finances right now, possibly cut the corners a little bit to make things work?
Basically, there are 4 categories of cost that we have. 2 broader, fixed and variable, and then within fixed you have mandatory and you have fixed voluntary and whatever. Now when it comes to fixed expenses, there isn't anything you can do. You're already committed, like your EMI or your rent or something. Even fixed voluntary kind of a magazine subscription or gym fees is something which you pay for years, so there isn't much you can do. When it comes to your variable expenses, variable voluntary is what you can cut down straight away. So eating out or going to restaurants or you know, partying or whatever, movies, that you can do it. When it comes to variable mandatory, which is like your transportation, food, clothing, there's something called a step down approach. So first, to give one example, say going to office. Now you can either go in a chauffeur driven car, or you can self drive it or do a carpool, or use a public transport, or probably walk if it's nearby. So it's a step down approach. If you approach it in a holistically and look at all 4 parameters, you would be able to save money.
All right, so it's possible to save money. It has come to that, really, given where we are seeing inflation and high interest rates and what the market has been doing over the last couple of weeks. So like Gaurav said, look at your varying, look at where your money is really going through the month. Relook at those magazine subscriptions if you have to, the gym subscription if you have to. Relook at the little expenses that you have during the day, see if you can notch those down before you take more drastic steps like possibly redeeming your mutual funds or selling a home to pay off a loan. That might make more sense. Keep a close eye on your credit card. That's a huge expense and those interest rates are very, very high. So those are the gaps in your finances you should be plugging before anything else. We're going to slip into another break. On the other side, we'll talk about whether it makes sense to buy a second home just to save on tax. We'll tell you that after the break. Don't go anywhere.